Hello out there. Today is September 4th, and thank you for joining me as we are here for our daily Bible reading through the Day by Day Kids Bible. And it's been written by Karen Henley. I'm so glad that you're joining me today. If you are getting your calendar out, I see it. There it is. It's time to get that out and your sticker or whatever you're using to mark off your days because you're about to hear the Bible today. My name is Robin, and I am within the Family Way Coaching, and I am happy to bring this event to you. Today, we are going to be reading again about faith and not having faith. And we're going to see that contrasted. And we're going to be able to see ourselves too, because we may have faith in some instances of events in our lives, and then we forget, or we just simply don't have faith for other things in our lives. And today, we want to look at the building of the faith that the disciples are having and then don't have as we read today's events. Today, we are going to be reading about when Jesus feeds the 5,000, as well as when he walked on the water. But before those things happen, Jesus had just sent his disciples out together so that they could learn how to also cast out demons and heal people and to bring people back from the dead. Now, doesn't it seem like if they were doing all of those amazing things, that they might have perfect faith? Well, guess what? They are people just like you and me, and nobody is perfect. But let us look at these stories and know that they are good lessons for us, that we can do the same thing. We can have low faith at times when we need to have a great deal of faith. We need to remember and build on the things that happen in our lives so that our faith can continually grow in God, so that through God we are able to do amazing things. We are going to start off with bread for everyone. So Jesus's friends had just come back from the trips that they had been on in their own first trying of ministry on their own. And it says that they had been going from town to town, and after some time they came back and they told Jesus what they had done. But many other people were around them and they didn't even have time to eat. So come to a quiet place with me, said Jesus, and let's go get some rest. They got into a boat together and they sailed across Lake Galilee. They headed to a place away from the crowds. But people saw them leave, and they knew that it was Jesus and his friends. So they came from all the towns and they ran to the place where Jesus would be landing. And they got there before Jesus did. And when Jesus and his friends landed, there were the people. And they stood in a big crowd. But Jesus felt sorry for them. They looked like sheep who had no shepherd. So he started teaching them. He told them about God's kingdom, and then he made the sick people well. It got later and later, and Jesus' friends came to him. It's getting late, they said. We're not in town, and we need to send the people back to town so they can buy their supper. Jesus looked at the crowd of people, and then he looked at Philip. Where can we get bread for these people? He asked. Now, Jesus asked just to see what Philip would say, because Jesus already knew what he was going to do. Oh, we would need lots of food, said Philip. We would work for 8 months and we still wouldn't have enough money to buy bread for everybody. We wouldn't even have enough to let each person have a single bite. Look at this little boy, said Andrew. He brought his own supper. He has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But that won't feed very many people. Then Jesus told his friends to put the people into groups. Some of them got into groups of 100, some of them got into groups of 50, and they all sat down on the grass. Now Jesus took the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish, and he gave the bracha, the blessing, which means he thanked God. Then he began to hand out the bread. He gave them to his helpers, and there were a lot more than just 5 loaves. Now Jesus' friends began to give the bread to the people, and then Jesus handed the fish to his friends, and they gave the fish to the people too. And there was more than enough. All of the people got to eat as much as they wanted. So after supper, Jesus' friends cleaned up the leftovers, and they filled up 12 baskets. Women and children had eaten there, and men had too, and there were about 5,000 just in men. And the people said, "This is the prophet we have been waiting for." Now Jesus sent his special friends out on the boat, and then he sent the crowds of people home. He knew that they wanted to make him their king. Now Jesus went upon a hill to be alone and pray. It was already dark, and out on the lake a strong wind began to blow. The water was getting wavy, and from the hill Jesus could see his friends in the boat. They were rowing hard, and they were trying to go one way, but the wind was blowing them the other way. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus went out to them, and he walked right on top of the water. Jesus' friends had only rowed about 3.5 miles, and now they looked up and they saw Jesus coming. In fact, he was just about to pass them, and they got scared when they saw him. They yelled. They thought he was a ghost. "I am," said Jesus. "Don't be afraid." "If it is really you, tell me to come to you," said Peter, "and let me walk on the water too." "Come," said Jesus. So Peter got out of the boat, and he stepped out onto the water, and he began to walk to Jesus. But then he saw the waves, and he got scared, and then he started going down into the water. "Lord, save me!" he cried. And right away, Jesus reached out to Peter. He lifted Peter up. "Your faith is so small," said Jesus. "Why didn't you believe?" They both climbed into the boat, and then the wind stopped blowing so hard. Jesus' friends were surprised. They hadn't really understood the miracle that Jesus had done with the bread and the fish. Their hearts were still a little hard. But now they worshiped Jesus, and they said, "You really are God's son." At last they reached the other side of the lake, and when they left the boat, people saw Jesus. They knew who he was, and so they ran through the land telling everyone. Everybody brought their sick friends to Jesus. When he was in the country, they brought sick friends. When he was in town, they brought sick friends. They all just wanted to touch the fringe on the edge of his coat. Everyone who touched his coat, just the fringe, or him, got well. And that is the end of our reading today. Wow. These were amazing things. So first, let's go back and see the disciples. Jesus was training them spiritually to see that they had the ability to do these things. They had the ability to heal others, to bring people back. They needed to be telling people about the kingdom of God. They had faith that they could do it, and they did. When Jesus was ready to feed the people, he knew what he was going to do. I love that he asked Philip, "Where will we get enough food?" And he was waiting to see if anybody would say, "Well, let God provide the food." But they didn't. They said, "We don't have enough money." And then we saw that when God, when Jesus was walking out on the water, we see that when they were scared, if you're following along in the Day by Day Kids Bible, so if you're reading Jedi, it says, Jesus says, it's just me. But in our big Bible, Jesus says, I am. Who is I am? God, that's right. So Jesus was saying that he was God. He said, I am. Don't be afraid. How many times have we read this year in the Bible where God says, I am? He tells us a lot of times, I am. God is the great I am. Oh, that's just yes, he is the great I am. And it just overwhelms me even just thinking about that. Be still and know that I am God. God tells us, be still and know that I am God. Peter, when seeing Jesus, asks him to call him and tell him to come out and walk on the water too, to come to him. And he starts to do it, but then he sees the reality. He sees the difficulty, and he no longer has the faith that he can do it because now he's starting to see this is impossible. I shouldn't be able to do this. But with man, things are impossible. But with God, nothing is impossible. One of the reasons I am sure that God is so against things along the nature of witchcraft is that we are not calling upon his power to do things. We are calling on the power of evil to do things. And God says that it is detestable to him. These things that the disciples and that Jesus are doing, some people might be tempted to call them magical, but they are not magic. Magic is things that are tried to be done through witchcraft. And we have illusion, which we say as magic when we can't explain something. We say it's just magical. But God does amazing things, and he doesn't use magic. It's because God has the ability to do these things. And instead of being tempted to pursue things of magic, we need to be more dedicated and intentional to pursue God and know that God is teaching us here that through him, none of these things will be impossible for us. But we need to have faith. And we are not having faith in ourselves or in the universe. It is faith in him. It is belief in God that does that. And when we believe in God that he is making this possible, then that is when things will occur. When we put our faith in God, Jesus will tell us soon that we can say to a mountain, he says, I tell you the truth. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will. Or also, we are told that he says, you could say to this tree, uproot and go plant in the sea, and it will do it. Jesus was already teaching them, that the disciples, that these things were possible through God. They were now experiencing the ability to heal and to bring people back from death and to cast out bad spirits. And now we see that with with God, Peter would have been able to walk on the water if he had just maintained his faith. We want to build our faith in God. These lessons are not just stories, they are lessons that as God builds our faith to do amazing works through us, we need to continue to remember those things and to use those experiences to build so that we can do greater things, not us, but that God can do greater things through us. Does he have to go through us? No, but he chooses to. He put his spirit in us, And he is choosing to work through the disciples, and he chooses to work through us. We will also be reading in uh, the book of Mark, I believe it is, where Jesus tells us that when we pray, we are to believe that God has already answered our prayer. I'm going to read that verse for us here. In Mark chapter 11, verse 24, Jesus tells them, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." So this is very important. We need to look at these not just simply as stories, but as a guidebook for how to live the way God wants us to live. God wants us to go and tell people about his kingdom. He also wants to do amazing things through us. And he teaches us these things as we have been learning this year by learning that doesn't God works everything for good. If we look through every experience, God will teach us something good. He will increase our faith. I had an amazing experience with my husband when he had a stroke 5 years ago. He ended up having severe dementia. He could not even find our kitchen. He didn't know what things were. He didn't know what my coffee maker looks like. He couldn't even read, but he didn't know what he didn't know. Now there were times you could talk to him and you wouldn't know that that was the case, but he didn't know the names of anything. And I needed to go back and teach him what the names of things were. Like we would be walking through the grocery store and he would be pushing the cart and he would just pick up different things that he would see and he would say, "What's this?" And I would say, "That's a can of peas." And he would say, "Oh, okay." "What's this?" "That's a box of cereal." "Oh, okay." "What's this?" And I would tell him what this was. And he just simply had no idea what anything was. Now, God had told me that he would heal my husband. So I fully believed that God would. My feeling was certain. It's what we would call a gut feeling. But that's how God talks to me. I get what we might call gut feelings. I just know that it is so. And because I know that it is so, I believe it. And because I believe it, it happens. And so I tell you not to glorify myself in being able to do that, but to tell you as a witness that it is real. When we believe that God will do something, he does it. And so I asked the doctor, his neurologist at his appointment, and I asked her, "Do you think his brain damage is permanent?" And she said, "Oh, yes, absolutely." And she said, "He has severe dementia." You would not know that to this day. Step by step, God healed my husband's brain. Now, it happened to be that God had already been preparing me for that journey because he had led me to a book about the brain written by a Christian doctor and a Christian neurologist. And they were here in California. Now, I had sought out that Christian neurologist, and he's no longer in practice, but I was there at his office where his name was on the door. But she was not a believer, and she really didn't know anything about his book. She just knew that she had essentially, I think, kind of purchased the practice, and his name was still on the door. So I was never able to see him, despite my effort to do so, and it wasn't necessary. And in that book, uh, which, as I mentioned, these were Christian doctors, they talked about the importance and the difference of people who have faith in God and people who don't. And people they have seen as doctors, people who have faith in God get well with different things, and people who don't. So they had also written in the book that the brain is, if you're going to become injured, that the brain is the best thing to have injured because it is so healable, which is the complete opposite of what this doctor had told me. And I took him to other doctors. I took him to a neuropsychologist who they performed tests with him, and nobody was ever impressed with his test results. They just kept saying, he's not getting much better. But I knew he was because I could see him doing things. I have a fine eye for detail, and every little thing I could see was getting better. And I would tell the doctors, he's doing this, and you said he wasn't going to be able to do this. And they said, when the one doctor says to me, "Isn't the brain amazing?" And I was just like, "Are you for real?" I said it was God. God said he would heal him, and he is. And he doesn't seem to perform well on these tests. But you know what these tests consisted of? They would ask him to name animals in a certain period of time. He had to name a bunch of animals. So we studied to the test, and I had to teach him all what the animals were because he didn't know what a chicken looked like. He didn't know what a duck was. Uh, he didn't know all these things. It was up there, but there was a disconnect. So God actually ended up making an amazing bridge for my husband. And he had lost the ability to read, but he didn't know that he couldn't read. And the disconnect was not in his brain per se, where he didn't know how to read. It was that his eye could not communicate to his brain what he was seeing with the letters. So he didn't know what the alphabet was anymore. And because he didn't know the letters of the alphabet, he couldn't read. So when I was teaching him the letters of the alphabet, he would get frustrated and he would, it took a while to remember and to relearn all the letters of the alphabet. Because when he was looking at them, his brain was having trouble telling him, his eye was having trouble telling his brain what he was seeing. However, one day, as we were going through this process, and I was tired probably, or just frustrated or discouraged or something, I don't know. But I wrote on his back. And you know how we will do, like we will write on somebody's back, we will draw, because we have our mind's eye where we can see it and we can identify it by what it feels like in a shape. And so I wrote on his back, and I just was writing, and I wrote I. And he said, I. Now he couldn't see that because it was on his back. And I was writing L. Whoops, for you, I'll go this way. And he said L, O, V, E. He said, I love you. He said, why do I know that? And I said, I don't know why. I just know that you do. He couldn't see, but what his eyes couldn't see, his brain could see. So once we learned the alphabet again, his his bridge was that if he didn't know what the word was, he just needed to spell it. And once he spelled it, his ear could tell his brain that that's what it was. And then once his mouth said it, his eye knew what it was. The doctor called it a bridge. I call that God. And all of the things that he was never supposed to be able to do again, he did again. We had a physical, we had a not a physical, a reading therapist. Uh, and she it was a speech therapist, but it wasn't for speech, it was for reading. And I was preparing him because I wanted him to return to the workforce. And every single doctor said, I don't know why you're pushing for him to go back to work. He's never going to be able to work again. And I said, that is not so. I just need to find something he can do. And I did. He just needed something that involved low-level reading because he couldn't read well. He's not a very avid reader. He never was. So he just didn't enjoy reading. So but he's great at visual. And she says to me, well, if he ever goes back to work, you call me. I want to know about it. So I did. I got him back to work. God got him back to work. And I called her and I said, "Guess what? You told me to call you if he ever went back to work." And he did. And now you would not know it. He operates his phone. He can do all of the things that he used to never be able to do, and then the things he was able to do before. And he's actually healthier now than he was previously. And God healed him. We used nutrition for a lot of things and like that. But um God is the one ultimately who healed him. And I believe that it happened because I had the faith to do so, that God would do so. It wasn't me. I didn't heal him. But I did pray and I did ask God to show me what to do throughout the process. And God guided me every step of the way. So I was eventually able to become a health and wellness coach. And because I found out that now the doctors who had written that brain book also had a health and wellness coach course. And so I was able to become master certified as a health and wellness coach and be able to have even more knowledge on how to help people heal with nutrition. And that's what I have my on my website is that I'm a health and wellness coach, and that's why the name of this event, for my business name rather, is In the Family Way Coaching, is because I am a health and wellness coach. And after God showed me that healing, that's the path that He put me on, and so I have a great deal of faith in our ability to have faith for God to heal. And so I want to encourage you with that story, with my witness, my testimony, that God absolutely did it in our life. And I know He can do it in your life too. So I hope that you find that daily application inspirational, and I hope that you feel that it lit your light. I know it lights my light every single time I think about it. When I remember riding on my husband's back and him knowing what I was riding, and then he knew it. That is my favorite story of all. God did amazing things for him, and I'm so thankful. And I want to tell everybody about the wonderful things that God has done because I want everybody else to experience amazing things like that with God too. To know that it is not only possible, but it is probable. Don't let what seems reality get in the way of your faith. Don't be discouraged by Peter, like Peter, when he looked out and he saw the waves and he no longer believed. And Jesus said, "Your faith is so small. Why didn't you believe?" Every doctor told me that it was impossible, that he would never get better. And yet he did. And nobody was impressed. I was impressed. Other people that I tell the story to, they are impressed, but the doctors, they were never impressed. Needless to say, I really don't go to see those doctors anymore. We're done. God did the work. So thank you for joining me today. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. I hope that you look for ways to give things to God, to bring things to God, so that you can increase your faith in God. That is the goal here. That is what I want to really put out today for our daily application. Not just for today, but in every day, in every situation, everything that looks like it even could be bad. That's why I'm so adamant that everything that even supposedly looks bad, God works good into it. That event, that happening with my husband, grew my faith in God so much that here I am today to be able to tell you about it and to do this event. Because I believe God has purpose for me to witness and to tell people about this and other things so that you can be encouraged and will go to Him. Because that's our goal, is to point people to Him, to tell people about God's kingdom. And I want to do that every day for you here. So thank you for joining me. I know it's been a very long episode. I didn't intend for it to be so, but thank you for sticking it out. And I will be here for everyone again tomorrow.